The woman standing beside my husband's casket wasn't crying. She was holding the hand of a little boy who looked exactly like him. For one terrifying second, I convinced myself it had to be a coincidence. Then the boy looked up at the casket and whispered, "Goodbye, Daddy." My knees almost gave out. Before I tell you what happened next, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. If you enjoy emotional family stories with shocking twists, you're in the right place. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 9 years old, and until that day, I believed I had been happily married for 16 years. My husband, Daniel, wasn't perfect. He forgot anniversaries. He worked too much. He answered work emails during dinner, but I never questioned his loyalty. Never. When he died in a highway accident, my entire world collapsed overnight. The funeral was supposed to be the hardest day of my life. I had no idea it would also become the day everything I believed about my marriage would fall apart. The service had already started when I noticed a woman I'd never seen before standing quietly near the back. She looked to be in her late 30s, simple black dress, no makeup, red eyes. Beside her stood a boy around 8 years old, dark hair, green eyes. The same crooked smile Daniel had in every family photo hanging in our house. At first I assumed they were distant relatives, maybe cousins, old family friends. But they never took their eyes off the casket. When the pastor invited close family members to say goodbye, the woman gently squeezed the little boy's shoulder. He walked forward, stopped beside Daniel's casket, placed a small toy baseball on top. Then, in a trembling voice, he said, "I miss you already, Dad." The entire room fell silent, and I realized I wasn't the only woman who believed she was Daniel's family. For a moment, nobody moved. I stared at the little boy, waiting for someone to correct him. Nobody did. The woman gently took his hand and tried to lead him back to their seats. Before she could, I stepped in front of them. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice barely steady. "What did he just call my husband?" She looked at me with exhausted eyes. "His father." It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "There has to be some mistake." She slowly shook her head. "I wish there was." The boy looked up at me. "Are you Daddy's friend?" My heart shattered. Before I could answer, Daniel's older brother, Mark, rushed between us. "Sarah," he whispered urgently. "Not here." I turned toward him. "You knew." He froze. That tiny hesitation told me everything. "You knew." Mark closed his eyes. "I found out a few months ago." "You found out?" I repeated, unable to believe what I was hearing. "And you never told me." "It wasn't my place. It became your place the moment my entire marriage became a lie." People around us had started whispering. The funeral director quietly suggested we move to a private room. I followed without saying another word. The woman introduced herself. "My name is Emily." She looked just as nervous as I felt. "I never wanted today to happen like this." I folded my arms, then explained. She took a deep breath. "I met Daniel 9 years ago." 9 years. My stomach dropped. That wasn't before our marriage. That was right in the middle of it. He told me he was divorced. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. He showed me divorce papers. He wore no wedding ring. He spent holidays with us. Every sentence felt like another crack in the life I'd built. I looked at the little boy sitting quietly in the corner, hugging the baseball glove he had brought for Daniel. How old is he? 8. The numbers hit me instantly. 8 years old. Daniel hadn't just cheated once. He had lived 2 lives at the same time. I looked back at Emily. "Did you know about me?" Tears filled her eyes. "No. I found out 3 days ago." I frowned. 3 days. She nodded. "The police contacted me after Daniel's accident. They couldn't understand why 2 different women had listed themselves as his spouse." Neither of us spoke. For the first time since Daniel died, I realized something that terrified me even more than his betrayal. If he'd lied to both of us, what else had he been hiding? I couldn't stop thinking about one question. How do you hide an entire family for 8 years? The answer came sooner than I expected. After the funeral, Emily and I sat across from each other in a quiet coffee shop a few blocks away. Neither of us touched our coffee. Neither of us knew where to begin. Finally, Emily reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "I think you should see this." She opened a photo album. The first picture showed Daniel standing beside a Christmas tree with Emily and the little boy. The date in the corner made my stomach turn. December 24th, 2022. That Christmas, Daniel had told me he was flying to Chicago for an emergency business meeting. I had spent Christmas Eve alone. He hadn't been working. He had been opening presents with another family. Emily kept scrolling. Birthday parties, beach vacations, a school graduation, family barbecues. Daniel smiled in every single photo. Not the forced smile he sometimes wore at home. A genuine one. It was as if I were looking at a completely different man. "I don't understand," I whispered. "When did he have time for all this?" Emily looked down. "He traveled a lot for work." I nodded slowly. "So that's how he did it. Every business trip, every weekend conference, every last-minute client meeting." It had all been a lie. Then Emily said something that made my blood run cold. "He bought us a house." "What?" "He said it was an investment property." I stared at her. Daniel and I had postponed buying a larger home because he insisted we couldn't afford a bigger mortgage. Meanwhile, he had bought another house for another family. I suddenly remembered all the overtime he claimed to work, the missing money, the canceled vacations, the constant excuses. It had never been about work. It had been about maintaining two separate lives. I looked Emily straight in the eyes. "Did he support you financially?" She nodded. "He paid the mortgage. He covered our son's school tuition. He even started a college savings account." Every answer felt like another betrayal. Then she quietly asked, "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Was he really your husband?" Without saying a word, I reached into my purse and placed my wedding ring on the table, beside our marriage certificate, which ID brought to finalize paperwork after the funeral. Emily's face went pale. She slowly reached into her own bag. She pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was an engagement ring. "He proposed to me 6 years ago." For a moment, neither of us spoke. We had both been living inside the same lie. Then my phone buzzed. It was the attorney handling Daniel's estate. His message was short. "Mrs. Mitchell, there's an issue with your husband's will. We need to meet immediately." I looked at Emily. Something told me the biggest secret hadn't been buried with Daniel. The attorney's office was less than 15 minutes away, but it felt like the longest drive of my life. Emily offered to wait outside. I shook my head. "If Daniel lied to both of us, you deserve to hear whatever comes next." She nodded silently and followed me inside. The attorney, Michael Reynolds, greeted us with a puzzled expression. He looked from me to Emily, then back again. "I wasn't expecting both of you." "You probably should have," I replied. He sighed and motioned for us to sit. "There appears to be a serious problem with Mr. Mitchell's estate." I folded my hands together. "What kind of problem?" He opened a thick file. 2 weeks before his death, Daniel updated his will. My heart sank. "He left everything to me, didn't he?" Mr. Reynolds hesitated. "I'm afraid it's more complicated than that." He slid a document across the desk. I scanned the first page. My name was there. So was Emily's. And beneath both names, Daniel's son, Noah. I looked up in disbelief. He named all three of us as beneficiaries. "Yes," Emily gasped softly. "I didn't even know he had a will." Mr. Reynolds nodded. "According to these documents, Mr. Mitchell intended for both households to receive equal financial support." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He expected us to share his estate. It appears so. I laughed bitterly. Even in death, he expected two strangers to clean up the mess he created. As the meeting continued, the attorney reviewed Daniel's finances. That's when another surprise surfaced. "There are 3 mortgages." I frowned. 3. One for your marital home, one for Emily's house, and a third investment property. Emily looked just as confused as I felt. "We never owned another house." Mr. Reynolds adjusted his glasses. "It isn't occupied. It's been empty for years." That made no sense. Daniel had always complained about money. He said overtime was the only reason we stayed afloat. So why had he been paying for an empty house? The attorney handed me another folder. The property contains a storage unit registered in Mr. Mitchell's name. My eyes met Emily's. What could possibly be inside? Mr. Reynolds answered honestly. I have no idea. But based on the paperwork, you both have legal access. For the first time since the funeral, Emily and I weren't looking at each other as rivals. We were looking at each other as two people who had been deceived by the same man, and whatever Daniel had hidden inside that storage unit. It felt like the final piece of a life neither of us had ever truly known. The storage unit was on the edge of town, tucked behind a row of warehouses I had driven past hundreds of times without ever noticing. Neither Emily nor I spoke during the drive. There wasn't much left to say. The man we'd both trusted had built 2 lives on lies. I unlocked the metal door with the key the attorney had given me. As it rolled open, I expected to see expensive furniture or forgotten boxes. Instead, the unit looked like a small office. There were filing cabinets, plastic storage bins, a desk, and shelves packed with neatly labeled folders. Emily looked around in disbelief. What is all this? I have no idea. I pulled open the top drawer of the desk. Inside were 2 planners. One had my name written on the cover. The other had Emily's. My stomach turned. Daniel had kept separate schedules for each of us. Every birthday, every anniversary, every excuse, every business trip. He had planned his double life down to the hour. Emily sat down in silence. I feel sick. So do I. Then I noticed a locked metal box sitting beneath the desk. The key was taped to the bottom. Inside were several envelopes. Each one had a different name. One was addressed to me, one to Emily, and one to Noah. Mine simply read, if you're reading this, I never found the courage to tell you the truth. I opened it. Daniel admitted everything. He confessed that he had lied from the very beginning. He had met Emily during a long business assignment in another state. At first, he planned to end our marriage. But when he learned Emily was pregnant, he panicked. Instead of making one honest decision, he made 100 dishonest ones. For 8 years, he convinced himself he could keep both families happy. He couldn't. Near the end of the letter, one sentence stood out. Neither of you deserved this. The only person responsible is me. Emily quietly wiped away tears as she finished reading her own letter. He told me he was ashamed every single day. I nodded. But shame didn't stop him. She looked at me. No, it didn't. As we packed the documents into boxes, I found one last folder hidden beneath the desk. Across the front, Daniel had written only 2 words. Insurance policies. When I opened it, my eyes widened. Daniel hadn't left us with debt. He had left behind a life insurance policy worth nearly $2 million. And according to the beneficiary form, only one name was listed. Mine. Emily slowly looked up at me. Neither of us said a word, because we both knew that money was about to test everything we'd just learned. Final for a long moment, Emily and I simply stared at the insurance papers. $2 million, 1 beneficiary, my name. I expected anger. I expected resentment. Instead, Emily quietly folded the papers and handed them back to me. I didn't know this policy existed, she said. I believe you, I replied. She smiled sadly. I think Daniel wanted to make sure you were financially secure after everything he put you through. What about you? What about Noah? She looked down at the floor. Well, figure it out. Her answer stayed with me all night. Legally, the money was mine. No one could challenge it. But every time I looked at Daniel's letter, I kept coming back to one sentence. Neither of you deserved this. He was right. Emily hadn't stolen my husband. She had been lied to just as completely as I had. The only innocent person in all of this was Noah, an 8-year-old boy who had lost his father, without ever knowing the truth. A week later, I asked Emily to meet me one last time. She looked nervous as she sat across from me. I spoke with my financial advisor, I said. And my attorney? She frowned. Why? I slid a folder across the table. Inside were legal documents. Emily opened them slowly. Then she looked at me in complete disbelief. I don't understand. I've created a trust. For Noah, tears immediately filled her eyes. The trust will pay for his education. It will help him buy his first home one day. And it will be there when he needs it. She couldn't speak. Finally, she whispered, "Why would you do this after everything that's happened?" I smiled through my own tears. Because Daniel spent years dividing people. I refused to let him keep doing it after Hayes gone. Emily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you." Months passed. We sold the unused investment property and followed the attorney's advice to settle the estate fairly. For the first time, everything was transparent. No more hidden accounts. No more secret schedules. No more lies. Emily and I never became best friends, but we did become something unexpected. To women who chose healing over hatred, every few months, she sends me a picture of Noah, Hayes growing fast. He started Little League, just like Daniel once did. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have looked like if the truth had come out sooner. But I've stopped asking that question. The past can't be rewritten. Only the future can. Looking back, I realized the biggest betrayal wasn't that my husband had a secret family. It was that he believed lies could protect everyone he loved. They couldn't. The truth hurt, but the lies destroyed 2 families. If this story taught me anything, it's that secrets don't disappear with time. They grow, and eventually they find their way into the light. If you stayed until the end, I'd love to hear your opinion. If you discovered your spouse had another family, could you ever forgive them? Or would you walk away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy emotional stories with unforgettable twists, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories every week.